Good morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the Commission, Manager Fuentes, and staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now 9:03 on September 13th, and before I ask for roll call, if you have any electronic device on you, could you please mute it so speakers are not interrupted by that sound? Thank you. We appreciate that. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Grieve.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Here.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Here.
Honorable Joshua Frankel.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The next item is silent meditation. I'd just like to have a few moments to read some prepared thoughts. This past few weeks has not been a good time for planet Earth. Hurricanes, floods, wildfires, earthquakes, mudslides, resulting in unfortunate loss of life and property. I ask you to keep the families of those lost ones in your prayers. We are 2 days past 9/11. That memory should be infused in our minds and hearts forever. And also our thanks and well wishes to those responders who put their lives at risk to save others. They are to be memorialized. Please join me in 15 seconds of silent meditation. Thank you. The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Heschler, could you please lead us?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion for approval of the agenda, please.
Mr. Mayor, I so move to approve the agenda for September 13th as submitted.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is comments from the public. The 3-minute rule applies. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name, your address, and if you have any document that you would like to become as part of the official minutes of this meeting, please put them in the black box next to the microphone. Ms. McLeod.
Hi, I'm Millie McLeod. I live on Magnolia, and I'm here to ask you, to give you a suggestion from my ladies in the afternoon aerobics at the class at the pool, that you don't put the cover up in October and save that money toward resurfacing the pool, because it's been 2 years the state's threatened to close that pool down if those things weren't done, and one of those things was to resurface the pool. So it'll be about, I would say, $35,000 to $40,000, maybe more, you would save, that you could resurface that pool. I saw a proposal for $61,000 on spraying and painting the surface of that pool and redoing things on it. And I don't know if that's still on the table, that proposal, that bid, but it seems to me that it would be the sensible thing to do is to not put that cover on this year only. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Carolyn Costas, DRC. I have 2 questions. One, I read in the paper that there's a meeting this evening at the Civic Center, and it was said to be from 6 to 8 on discussing the flight pattern over Elephant Butte Lake. However, someone else told me that it was from 5 to 7. Can you make that clear?
6 to 8.
6 to 8, thank you. I have another question. Given the desert atmosphere, how far will the sound of a sonic boom travel? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Ms. Perone?
Sophia Perone, Truth or Consequences, and this relates to the sonic boom and last meeting when we had all the explosions discussed. And I've noticed ever since I've lived in TRC, about 14 years, that every Saturday and Sunday morning, well, maybe 7 a.m. or so, you start hearing automatic gunfire shooting from the shooting range. And I live all the way downtown. I live right near the Riverbend Hot Springs and everything else. I'm sure other people hear it. Now, I don't mind the church bells, but the shooting, and then right after the shooting or during the shooting, I got the guy that flies over the house, I call it in his flying lawnmower. These people who are out there in the mornings flying these little planes, I mean, you can't drive a car that loud. It's not I'm not talking about the helicopter going to pick people up. I'm just talking about flying around. It's kind of weird. And these things are quality of life things. The night sky ordinance, we've never adopted it. It's important. We have stars. We have planets. We have stuff we want to look at. And then just taking care of things, making sure the quality of life for people is good. The swimming pool's part of it. The parks are part of it. Quality of life is pretty easy. So let's do it. Now, last week, I want to say I wasn't here, and I listened on the radio, and I was so impressed to hear so many of my fellow citizens that I'd never heard before stand up at this meeting and talk about things that they cared about. It was wonderful and inspirational. Now, I have a document with me that I'm going to give to the city clerk. It's about the way we run business here in TRC at the city meetings. It's a decision made in 2009 about how special meetings are approved and voted for. It's a bunch of violations of the Open Meetings Act that I will give our city clerk, Renee, to peruse and look at, because it's very important, because we are in many violations. And when I went to the city site, it's off the internet. We didn't pay our bill. And it says, GoDaddy says trcnm.org is offline. That started yesterday, and I called the office. Today it's completely off because I wanted to count how many minutes were wrong. And this has negated the decisions in almost all those minutes. But you can remedy them very easily without me bothering to complain about it. It's all in this document. Thank you.
Hello, I was here last meeting, and
Could you please state your
oh,
name?
sorry,
for the record?
my name is Sharon Eastfold. My husband and I own 1301 North Silver, and we are in the process of moving here from Albuquerque, where they have made every egregious management mistake imaginable. So to that end, I would like to thank the people who are asking for us to maintain our dark skies and our buffer of natural environment around the area. And I'd like to say that we are researching how to create a Chihuahuan Desert Conservancy in this area, because you've got a lot of beautiful Chihuahuan Desert still available around your community, and those areas could draw in lots of tourists. We just read something about a little community north of Albuquerque called Corrales having bird tours for $25 a pop. So, you know, keep those tours and things in mind. I also would like to just comment quickly about this item number 2 here about recusing public utility advisory member from when it's an influence on their income. That's a no-brainer. I hope you go through with that. The public hearing item, I'm not totally familiar with all the details, but if you've got a mobile home with 15 feet between the mobile homes, if you want that closer, please keep in mind response teams, emergency vehicles, because mobile homes are more likely than standard-built homes to go up in smoke. And I would just say, be sure to address the safety issues there. So once again, thank you. I'm enjoying, I was just thinking that last night when we arrived, this is more like coming home than going back to Albuquerque. It's a beautiful place. We love it for the quiet and the peace and the dark skies, so don't forget that, and don't ruin your entry with a lot of fast food junk things that keep people from coming to your downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Lombardo. I live on Silver Street in TRC. I'm here to talk about the goldfish issue and a couple things I want to say. I'm not really up on what all this is about. I do know we have laws already about giving away animals or selling animals, and if this is because somebody important wants a change, you know, if the average Joe wanted a change, would you do it? Would you even think about it? No. So the whole thing is, you know, totally mind-boggling why this is even an issue, why everybody's even here. First of all, if they're going to sell goldfish, tell them to get a business license. If they're going to give goldfish away, I remember, you know, carnivals where you played the goldfish game, you threw the ping pong ball into the bowl and you got the fish. Fish, even though they're not cuddly and warm, are living things. And if you're going to give them away, you take the responsibility of that life. And you give them away to kids normally. And do the parents want them? Do the parents want to clean the bowl? Do the parents want to learn how to keep that fish alive? It is a life. A life. The fish need, hobbyists will tell you, they need water temperature. They need chlorine out of the water. They need feeding, regular feeding, but not overfeeding. They need surface of water to air. They need all kinds of things. I would bet that fish that are given away, if they don't mostly die in the first week, will surely almost all die in the first month, because most of these people are not going to learn how to take care of these fish properly. What is ick? Are these people going to care if their fish gets ick? Do they know how to take care of it? It's pretty easy. You just get some medicine and put it in the water. But most people aren't going to do it. I am against this. We have laws. Let's stick with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address? I think another gentleman stood up. Yes, sir.
Honorable Mayor and members of the Commission, my name is Ike Eastvold. I'm the better half of the lady that just spoke, Sharon. And yes, we are moving to 1301 North Silver. That's the estate of Barbara Nelson. Some of you may have known her, very fine lady. And we're extremely impressed by the wildlife values that still remain in the area around that part of the city. Just around our property, we have listed 41 different species of birds. And when you have that many birds, you have a healthy ecosystem. And it's the Chihuahuan Desert, which is one of the 4 great deserts of the Southwest that is not really memorialized and celebrated the way the Sonoran and the Mojave are, for instance. So there's a real potential to take the remaining lands, many of which are right in the city limits, and create a Chihuahuan Desert Conservancy, which could serve many different purposes. Some of the fine lands are right across from the elementary school. So we have a tremendous educational linkage that exists there and potential for research. These lands have not been looked at. They've not been inventoried by professional scientists. And there are many of those who could be contacted and brought to bear. Open space. These lands can help to shape the urban form of Truth or Consequences and strengthen your wholesome development patterns. And of course, outdoor recreation, once you have research and documentation of what the values are, then you can begin carefully to provide for outdoor recreation. I remember when I was a young man, I went to Joshua Tree National Monument and was fortunate to take a hike with a ranger on the native people's use of desert plants. And I was absolutely amazed. There wasn't a single plant in the desert that the native peoples didn't use for fiber, food, or medicine. And that started me on a lifelong interest in the desert. Instead of riding a motorcycle around or shooting a gun at rabbits, I began to learn about the deserts. And one really fine book which could be used in interpretation of the Chihuahuan Desert is Gary Nadam. I don't know if it's appropriate to pass this around to you, but there are species like mesquite, creosote, devil's claw, amaranth, which were life-giving species to the native peoples and have a very interesting natural history and tell us a lot about Truth or Consequences and how it relates to the rest of the Sonoran Desert and the Chihuahuan Desert and Mexico. And so just please keep those in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else like to address the commission, Mr. Penn?
Morning. My name is Elena de la Torre, and I live at Riverside Drive in Tiercy, New Mexico. And I just want to say something about the request for variance on number 11, number 28. They're not talking about number 26, the one we lived in. We were asked to vacate because we complained about the mobile home being too close to our property. They moved our shed, they moved our carport to the other side, took away our front yard, took away our backyard, moved in the mobile home. And you can stand on the back porch of number 26 and measure it 5 feet from the window to the porch of the rail. They're saying number 28, number 28's on the other side. They're not talking about number 26, the one where we were asked to vacate because we were causing too many problems. And that's all I have to say. Just think about not passing it because that's illegal. Because there's a gas line, like she was saying, the response people, they cannot get in because there's a gas line right between both trailers. And the back porch, you would go down the stairs, and the front door to the other trailer is right there. It's 5 feet from the door, from the porch. And we just needed, they told us to vacate because we complained to this code officer, and they told us that it was illegal, and they haven't done anything about it, so they told us to vacate. So we had to move out. So I hope that it doesn't pass, because I don't think anybody would live in number 26 because you're only 5 feet away from the bedroom window. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Fenn.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Fenn, 316 North Foch. Mr. Green, wonderful article in Herald this morning about the space tourism. Seems to me that it's an appropriate time to distract people from the real issues of this meeting, which is a $3 million loan for a new police station. A few errors in your little report. Number one, I guess nobody did any investigation or checking of facts, but as far as the state of New Mexico is concerned, Last Frontier does not exist. There is no apparent location or organization called Last Frontier as a tour company at all. Then going on later on, you say, our customer at the LBJ building is not the tour operator. Our customer is the MOU for Spaceport America. Green explained, to their credit, once the MOU was signed back in March, they have been paying us rent every month. They do not pay rent. Paying zero, I guess if you call it paying rent, then zero is their rent. They pay $300 a month towards the utilities. Towards the utilities, does not cover the utilities. Rent is the $3,500 a month that Spaceport America pays for its office in Las Cruces to much wealthier people than we are, and not for a public building. for a private building. I was reminded that tomorrow there is a free admission to the spaceport for anybody interested. There's going to be a legislative meeting, committee meeting at the spaceport, and from 9 to 3, the spaceport will be open. Anybody can go and visit. So you save yourself the $35 that, wait a minute, I called the number last night for the spaceport tours, and it says nothing. It doesn't connect you with anyone. So where is this coming from? Where is all this nonsense coming from? Follow the Sun Tours went out of business because there was no business. And you think that this guy from Las Cruces is going to drive a bus up here and take 6 or 7 people out to the spaceport and make a living? Not on my dime, thank you. The MOU may be with Spaceport America, but if they give it to a profit-making organization to use, then that's anti-donation, and it will have ramifications. Just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission?
Terry Vandevetter, I live at 1005 Coper Street. I would just like to comment on the street repair that has been hashed around here a while back. I'm completely for it. I think everybody in TRC is. But I think your method of finance might be flawed, where you're trying to use real estate taxes instead of getting your funds from the people that actually use it. As one example, say I have a home that's worth $100,000. My neighbor has one worth $100,000. She's a widow that doesn't have a car. We drive 2 cars. The cars are what bother the streets. My neighbor down the street, they have 2 teenagers, so they have 4 cars. But all 3 of us pay the same amount, according to what I can understand with your real estate ends. The thing that needs to be done is to try to implement a wheel tax so that the cars and the people that are using the streets are the ones that are paying for it, because they're the ones that want it. And I would really like to see something other than the chip seal, because that stuff does not last. It might last 6 months or might last 7 months, but then it goes to pieces. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, Deb.
My name is, excuse the paper, Deborah Peters, and I live in Las Palomas. And I'm here to talk about item 3 under section G, the discussion action for the publication of 688. The amendment to 3-6A. Like Diane, I'm a little kind of wondering why this is going on, but to be specific, this change is considered to exclude goldfish from the protections that 3-6 gives to all animals within the city. For members of the audience who are not familiar with the definition of animal, as stated in Chapter 3, it defines animal as any vertebrate members of the animal kingdom, excluding man. So fish are included in this definition. The ordinance is currently written in a nutshell, has prevented animals from being sold, given away, Teston's Lot, Walmart, Bullocks, in front of flea market. I wasn't around when this ordinance was enacted, but I suppose it was to protect animals from hot, cold temperatures, mishandling, and also maybe to protect the public from animals who may or may not have rabies shots. If this ordinance is changed, it will open up the possibility of goldfish being sold anywhere within the city limits, to include the above-mentioned places. And there are approximately 25 species of goldfish, to include some pretty exotic ones that would bring a pretty penny to anybody at a flea market. In other words, by allowing this change for 1 or 2 people, you are opening up to every city resident and every non-resident who wants to make a quick buck off feeder fish or exotic goldfish. It's just too broad of a change. Currently, if people violate the ordinance and are seen selling or giving away animals on property not properly licensed, animal control can either cite them into court or ask them to cease that activity. If this change goes forward, any goldfish being sold or given away, since they can't be cited or run off, they would be subject then to the city's animal cruelty ordinance. Putting a goldfish in chlorinated tap water, bottled or distilled water, or water that's too acidic or alkaline or the pH is off, can be deadly. Does the average person know this? No. And goldfish for sale will need to be kept at an optimum temperature of approximately 70 degrees. This temperature could be monitored by animal control, who may have a laser thermometer in their truck. So I asked, rather than open up this entire can of worms to change goldfish protections, can't the person or people requesting just obtain a proper license and be done with it? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Paul Pierce, I'm a resident of TRC. Honorable Commissioners, I would like to answer that question that was posed earlier about the impacts of being in a militarized flight zone and being impacted by sonic booms and all the stuff that the Air Force does and exercises. I lived in southern Arizona for 44 years, and I spend weeks in the outdoors. I guide hikes, and I'm just, I'm an outdoors person, and so I was exposed to it. And the question about the sonic booms, you could hear sonic booms rattling windows and shaking walls all the way for 50 miles across the entire Tucson Basin when planes were overflying around the Tucson area at supersonic speeds. And the Air Force, of course, always denies that they reach those speeds. And, people get cracks in their walls. Their animals get terribly frightened. And it's always, denials. And then when they finally admit that, yes, it was their equipment, they come back and say, oh, the damage was already there, or some, story like that. So, I mean, the consequences of being in a flight zone are tremendous. And if we allow it to happen and don't, take a stand to oppose, letting our quiet skies become, assaulted by all this training, it's going to happen we're stuck with it. I mean, it's not a pretty sight. And the other thing that I would like to point out is, this is one of the poorest places and one of the poorest states in the nation, and we don't have a whole lot going for us as far as economic, manufacturing and industry. So we rely on tourism, and I know that tourism will be affected by this, because when you get buzzed, which I have been by supersonic planes at 200 feet off the deck where they're not supposed to be, I mean, I have literally been knocked over by a sonic boom, and scared by it. I mean, so anyway, I moved here to escape this kind of high noise level of, I want to live in a place that's peaceful and quiet, and and I love that about Sierra County, and it's going to go away. I really strongly feel that way, and I hope that the city is sending someone to the hearing that the Air Force is putting on tonight, and it's going to track this, and we'll, think long and hard, and don't think too long, because it's a fast process. The EIS that they're doing is going to happen really quick, and if you're going to take a stand or make comments about it, you need to do it. You need to do it soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners. Linda DiMarino on behalf of Main Street Truth or Consequences. I am here to let you know, if you haven't heard already, we received a grant from AARP Community Challenge Grant is what it's called. It was $15,921 for a program we call Walk Downtown. It's a two-part program. The first being we'll have some money to fix up the sidewalks in the downtown. As you know, some of them are historic sidewalks. We've already been in touch with the State Historic Preservation Office and a WPA expert, because Main Street is an organization with a historic preservation ethic, so we want to do whatever we can to maintain the historic integrity of our downtown. So we're really excited about that. And the second part of that is a program in the downtown called Walk Downtown. We would like to get more people walking through downtown. So the idea is to have community leaders like yourselves potentially leading some of these walks. And the downtown loop is about a mile, so a nice little morning walk might be nice. So I'll be contacting you later on to see if you're willing to help out with those as well. And Main Street's got a busy schedule coming up for events. We have the Trick or Treat downtown will be held on October 31st. And then we have a Scoop the Loop event, which is the day before the Veterans Day Car Show. I believe it's November 3rd. It's the Friday night before. We're going to get participants from the car show come in the night before to, cruise the loop, kind of like they used to do back in the day. So we encourage people to come downtown and check that out. Those cars are amazing. And it's cool to see them at a car show, but it's even cooler to see them out revving their engines and, yeah, you get it. We also have Small Business Saturday coming up the weekend after Thanksgiving, encouraging local business, people shopping local. And then we also have Old Fashioned Christmas the second Friday in December. I believe that is December 8th. So we have a lot of stuff coming up, and make sure you get them all on your calendar. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission?
My name is Demi Jo Pipkins, and I used to live on Winter Haven, and that ordinance to park another mobile home 11 feet from the other mobile home is ridiculous, because the heat, we had it measured, and our utility bill went up twice as high, 3 times as high as it did the following month. Our electric bill had never gone up that far, and we were paying $150 for a month. We moved here to retire, and it has been nothing but a nightmare. And it's all about the buck, because these people that bought the mobile home, all they do is raise the rent and don't clean the park, don't do any of the ordinances. And I've talked to the CO here in TRC, and he's asked them to move those mobile homes. And these people keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and now they want this other thing to happen. Well, if it's going to happen, these people are going to start moving away from this town. So I suggest that things get better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ron, do you want to address it?
Ron Korik, TRC. Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor. This is just an FYI. I'm a retired, and I'm drawing my Social Security, which I did get a raise in February, in 2015 of 1.7%. This year we got $5, but Medicare took that back. Okay. So, but now the county can raise our property values by 3% every year and tax it appropriately. But they don't care that our sewer rate went up by 5%, and it will go up 5% every year. And that compounds. Or the sewer doesn't care about my homeowner's insurance going up, and with all these catastrophes, it's probably going to go up again. So, and that doesn't care about that my trash has gone up 5%, and it will go up 5% for every year, and that's compounded. It doesn't care that my car insurance has gone up. Did I mention that I only got a 1.7% increase in 2015? And now the providers for CPAP won't supply that out because Medicare won't pay them. So that's more money out of pocket. This one, haircuts went up 22%. I mean, it's funny, but hey, that's another $2 out of my pocket. So this is, every time you all talk about making raises or making something automatic, are you really thinking about your constituents? Are you really thinking about what's right for our public, the people who live here? And I understand that our community is shrinking, but the rest of the people have to pay for more to keep up what the city's doing now. So, you know, I had, in my company I retired from, I always heard, got to do more with less, do more with less. In government, in the governments, I've never heard that. It's more like, we're going to do less with more of your money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else want to address the commission? Seeing none, thank you for those comments. We will move on. The next item is response to public comment. Do any commissioners have any response to anything that we heard today or in the past? Commissioner Clark.
Ms. McCoy, is she still in here? The comment about the swimming pool, I think that's very generous to think that we would close the pool or not put the cover on for the winter. Millie McLeod. And I think that it's very, once again, very generous. But if we did that, we'd need to look at something like a heat exchanger or something else, because we have made a commitment to having 12 months out of the year swimming pool available for our people. Sorry. And so that's something that needs to be taken care of, whether it's a heat exchanger, putting the cover back on. But we do know, and I'll kick our city manager if we don't find the money to cover that or resurface that pool. We are not going to lose it. F-16s, Mr. Pearson, I hope you're going to be at that meeting tonight. You have some very good input. And Ron, it would be nice to tie things to the CPI index so that everybody has the same kind of increase. And I think your point is well taken. That it's really kind of unfair to have 5% here and 1% here. It would be nice if, you know, we still were having the same $19.99 in 2017 and still have the same purchasing power. And I totally agree with your comments. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other comments? I'd like to,
Well, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, just to follow up on Commissioner Clark's and Millie McLeod's suggestion, I think that item should be placed at a commission meeting for the authorization to close the pool. And I say that because we do have some members of Friends of the Pool that we have not heard from, and we want to make sure everybody's in agreement. I'm not sure if there was already a consensus, but definitely it should be a matter of the commission authorizing staff to do that. And that way we can also kind of plan for it. But again, I want to make sure the community, the pool users, and there's notifications, are all in agreement that that's the plan moving forward in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to respond. Paul, I didn't get your last name, and I apologize. Pierce, thank you. The commission sent a letter, a unanimous vote. The commission sent a letter of concern to Mr. Andrew Gomalak from Holloman Air Force Base, talking about some of the items that you have brought forth this morning. And I don't know about other commissioners, but I will be there at the Civic Center this evening from 6 to 8, and I encourage any citizens who have any concerns, pro or con, for this invasion of our airspace, please make yourself heard tonight. Mr. Eastvold, FYI, the new tourism event coordinator that the city just hired about 10 days ago, although she comes from Wisconsin, we're not going to hold that against her, Melanie. She is a Berta, and we have talked about the potential of Sierra County for ecotourism, et cetera. So you're right on, and I appreciate your thoughts. I have two things that are holdover from last couple of weeks. The first is a presentation or a 3-minute comment that Mr. Randall Lawson, unfortunately he's not here today, mentioned pertaining to the swimming pool. And I want to read you a letter so it becomes a formal part of the minutes of this commission meeting that will be sent to Mr. Lawson. And it goes as following. Randall, I have always admired a person who has passion, dedication, and commitment for a cause. In this case, I am talking about your involvement at the Truth or Consequences pool. First, let me state that I don't remember any city commissioner putting forth a motion to close the pool because of the financial drain to our limited budget. Yes, Commissioners Clark and Richter did explore other options with the high school that might have been available to us, and yet the pool is still here and remains open. That said, to threaten Manager Fuentes and the City Commission, and I quote, either this thing gets done, and if Mr. Fuentes will remember, he could be his biggest supporter or he would be his worst nightmare. If this pool closes, believe him, he promises he will be all of yours worst nightmare. End of quote. Does not accomplish anything and will not be tolerated. Our Rule 7, comments from the public, states, anyone making out-of-order comments as determined by the presiding officer may be subject to removal from the meeting, and any person who violates the rules of conduct may be subject to having their speaking privileges removed at future city commission meetings. Hopefully, we can get past this incident and move forward. Best, Steve Green. The other thing I wanted to comment on briefly is an article that appeared in the Herald. And before anyone thinks I'm going to do battle with the editor of the Herald, and the publisher, nothing could be farther from the truth. I had a lovely meeting with Mr. Tooley last week for about a half an hour explaining what exactly I was going to do and what exactly I was going to say, because I don't like to be blindsided, nor I'm quite sure that any other people walking this earth like to be blindsided. Just going to refer to an article that starts out, there is asbestos, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to go down to the bottom where it talks about a quote that I made. I'm not going to talk about the part that is attributed to the police chief or the city manager because I don't have that authority. So at the end of the article, it says, when the city found out there was asbestos in the old firehouse, this is me speaking, the city commission supported the recommendation of the city manager to have it removed. In parentheses, they removed the building, end of parentheses. So I did have a couple phone calls from people that asked me, well, why didn't you just remove the asbestos? And when I spoke to Mr. Tooley, I said, you know, this article went from A to Z, and you left out a lot of the important information in the middle, and I'm just going to flush out that article for those citizens so they understand what happened. Back in 2010, we discovered that there was asbestos in the old firehouse, and once the new firehouse had been built up on 9th Street, that building became empty, even though still a city asset, and was actually used by our police department to store evidence, like if a car was involved in a robbery or something like that, or stolen. So it was basically just a storage shed. So we went in and contracted out with a company called Grand Core Enterprises, and on October 8th, 2010, city spent $13,953.58 for the removal of the asbestos, because as I'm quoted in the article, to go further, it says it's not only a moral, ethical, and legal consideration, it's just common sense. Well, subsequently, after we took a look at that building and removed the asbestos, we were looking at it for a home for the Visitor Center for Spaceport America. And unfortunately, that didn't work out, but we still had this asset. So we contracted out with a company called Smith Engineering to do a structural analysis of the building. That was on November 29th, 2011, and they came back with the roof. It was a bad roof, and if you have a bad roof, you know you're going to lose your building eventually. And they gave us a quote of about $100,000 to fix that roof. In January 30th of 2012, now we're 2 years out, we contracted out with a local appraiser by the name of Dr. Vince Barrett, who put the value of the building and just the land that it sat on, not the entire land next to the fishing pond and where our dog park's going to be, but just the land on top of the firehouse, and that was valued at $64,000. His opinion to the manager at that particular time to rehab the building for electric, plumbing, walls, floor, HVAC, windows, etc., was going to be $264,000. And at that particular time, the sitting commission, working with staff, felt it would just be a bad investment of public dollars to spend this type of money on a building and land that only had a value of $64,000. So I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the commission, of the citizens. There's some people who have moved into town, and we appreciate the new people moving into town. Question, well, why would you destroy a building? Why don't you just get rid of the asbestos? And I wanted to go on record, and we did not take this lightly. We do not take this lightly. And these are the different measures and deliverables and times that the city commission finally moved on. So I just wanted to make a public statement to that, because there's been talk here of asbestos and removal of asbestos from buildings. So if there's no other response to public comment, we will move on. I do need a motion for approval of the consent calendar, which consists of City Commission regular minutes, August 9th, 2017, City Commission regular minutes of August 23rd, 2017, Public Arts Advisory Board minutes, May 15, 2017, accounts payable, August 2017, and approve the waiver for a special dispenser's permit for bullets for an event to be held at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church on September 16, 2017.
Mayor, I have one correction.
Yes, Commissioner Clark.
On the minutes, page 5,
Which
Ms.
minutes?
Canton.
The 9th or the 23rd?
23rd, I believe. The 1%, there was a comment about the 1% commission that we are collecting for the Civic Center. And the way it read to me, and it may be just I'm reading it incorrectly, that could be used for repairing water lines, like the water line that broke on 3rd Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if that's what came across, that's not what I said. I don't believe that 1% commission, that we're collecting for the Civic Center can be used for water pipes. I believe it has to be used for the Civic Center and or whatever the tourism director is doing with that particular building.
Thank you. Good catch on that, and maybe we can change the minutes to have that reflected. Any other concerns about approval of the consent calendar? I will stand for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar as noted and also check on the minutes of August 23rd, 2017 and make correction as noted by Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Good catch on that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Carries unanimously. The next item now into public hearings is F1, public hearing, final adoption of ordinance number 686, authorizing issuance and sale of 2,188,146 City of Truth and Consequences municipal gross receipts tax revenue bonds for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, furnishing, equipping, rehabilitating, making additions to, or making improvements to a law enforcement facility. And I will start off with the presentation. And I'd just like to add on that receipts taxes coming out directly from the police department's budget of 1/4%, that was authorized, I believe, back in 2011, if my memory serves me correctly. It is not coming out of the general funds of the city of TRC. Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, I'd like to introduce Linda Melendres to come up to the podium, as well as the representatives from George K. Baum as well. They'll touch on the financing part of it. Raheel is here with us today. And I'd like to kind of have Linda just give a quick overview of the proposed ordinance, and Mr. Raheel can kind of go into the interest rates and the financing schedule and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Again, my name is Linda Melendres, and I'm acting as bond counsel for the city. The ordinance before you is authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and intercept agreement. The pledged revenues are from the tax ordinance 606, which was adopted, as the mayor said, in 2011, which imposes a municipal local option gross receipts tax. And this 1/4% is dedicated to public safety, and as the mayor stated before, is within the police department's budget. These pledge revenues will be dedicated to acquiring and constructing a law enforcement facility, and the payment of the loan agreement cannot reach into any other general or other fund of the city. And based on the intercept agreement, the first principal payment will be on May 1st, 2018. I'll let Raheel go into the financing, and if you have any further questions about the ordinance, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Green, Commissioners. My name is Raheel Hirji. I'm an associate with George K. Baum and Company. Previously, you all have been addressed by Mark Valenzuela from our company. Unfortunately, he's out of the country today, so I'm here in his place with my colleague Clint Elkins to go over the sale results of the municipal gross receipts tax bond sale. The presentation that Clint is handing out now is provides a final pricing summary. So if I can get you all to turn to page 3 of the deck. The final amount of the bond that was sold to the New Mexico Finance Authority is $2,188,146. It is a 25-year final maturity, meaning the bond will mature on May 1st of 2042. As Linda mentioned, the first principal payment will occur on May 1st of 2018. The true interest cost on the bond that was finalized last week ended up at 1.91%. I think the figures that were shared with the Commission in July were about 1.93%, so a slight improvement based on interest rates as of last week. Of course, this is going to be a tax-exempt bond for a municipal entity, and the bond was issued with a 10-year call option, so the city will have the option to refinance at a lower interest rate on October 27th, 2027, at no additional fee or penalty. And our role was municipal advisor, and the bond was sold to the New Mexico Finance Authority. On page 4 is a breakout of the sources and uses of the proceeds of the bond. So we're issuing $2,188,146 in proceeds. $2 million of that will be deposited to the project fund for the law enforcement facility. $111,734.10 is set aside with the New Mexico Finance Authority in a debt service reserve fund. That's set aside in case there's any delinquencies of P&I over the life of the bonds. At the very end, final maturity, that debt service reserve fund gets released to pay the debt service on the bonds. So the last payment is made by that reserve fund. The cost of issuance, that is to pay for our firm and Ms. Melendres' legal services. They're covered by the $60,000. NMFA charges their underwriting fee of $16,411.10, and there is a rounding amount of 80 cents that's deposited to the debt service fund. On page 5 is just a graphical interpretation of the P&I. You'll notice there that the average annual debt service is level over 25 years, and it's right at about $111,734 a year, and that is reflected on the final debt service schedule. That's a separate document that was passed out to you all. At this time, I'll stand for any questions you all have.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
My only question is that when this was presented to us by Mr. Valenzuela on the 9th of August, the loan amount to NMFA would be $2,185,884, and now we're looking at $2,188,146, and the interest rate's gone down. Can you explain to me? It's only like $2,500 or so, but can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I think the NMFA underwriting fee came up a little bit from what from the numbers he may have presented at the time, and the debt. So the interest rates are set 1 week before the commission takes action. And when Mr. Valenzuela presented it, we used the interest rates at the time and structured the bond with the rates that NMFA provides and the numbers that they provide as of that date. When the final numbers were set, there's a slight variance of about $3,000, and that really pertains to the Debt Service Reserve Fund and NMFA's fee, which are based off the par amount of bonds that are issued.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions from the commission? I will now open it up to the public. We have no proponents, and we have 3 people who have signed up as opponents. Mr. Fenn, you're signed up first.
Ron Fenn, Truth or Consequences. I have a real problem with this, and I hope that you can appreciate it. Nobody talks bottom line anymore. Oh, 1.91%. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. It means that the $2 million will cost $2,752,000 plus to the people of Truth or Consequences, and $2 million is $564,000 less than the estimate for the construction. And of course, we all know that construction never falls under cost. It's always over. Just like the city never told the good people of Truth or Consequences that they had to put in over $200,000 into building hot water, the Healing Waters Plaza. Oh no, we have a grant. We have a grant for $235,000. The contractor charged us $395,000, and that did not include any of the work that was done by the city, which was considerable. Months of work by the city. We don't. Well, it saves money because we don't record the cost. Give me a break. If anybody did that in business, they would be jailed for it. You just talked about a $64,000 building that you didn't want to put $264,000 into. Well, the building, if you had put $264,000, I'm talking about the firehouse, would not have been worth $64,000 anymore. It would have been a building worth probably over $300,000 if it was brought up to code. So, and yet we're talking about putting $3 million into a similar building with asbestos problems that have not been addressed. There's been no estimate on the cost of remediation of the asbestos. Oh, we'll wait until construction starts. Give me a break. That building will cost the people of this city over $3.5 million, and the GRT that you folks gave to the police department can be just as easily repealed. Obviously, they don't need half of it. Let's take that half away and put it into something like streets or water or other utilities, things that are necessary in this town. I have some interesting information that I put together, and that is I'm comparing this city to Aztec, New Mexico. We have the same demographics, 67% white population, and just a few other little changes, but basically the same communities. Aztec has half the crime rate of Truth or Consequences, and they have fewer police. And they have a police station that is about the same size as the one we currently have, with fewer people. They also have a big difference in that their court system which cost them.
Mr. Fenn, I'm not going to impose on your time, but we're talking about an issuance of a bond, and if you could just more or less...
We are talking about a project for
you.
which this bond is being done, and it impacts this city. It's not just a bond because it impacts this entire city. We have a part of the police work is connected with our judicial system. Our judicial system has a budget of over $200 and some thousand dollars this year, and they take in $6,000 in fines. Aztec has a $208,000, no, that was ours. Aztec has about a $260,000 budget for their $248,000. And guess what? They take in $365,000 in fines and fees. 365 against 348,000. In other words, the court pays for itself and all of its doings. And as a result, the crime rate in the city is much lower, half of what it is in Truth or Consequences. You guys need to step back and say, what does a building do for the city when they already have one that they haven't even paid for? Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Sophie Pearl.
Sophia Perone, Truth or Consequences. I think it would be great if we could do this building for the police, if we could afford it, and it was the right building. I would rather build them a brand new building. I think it's ridiculous. Now, here's the deal. I lived in Albuquerque through community policing in the 90s. And at that time, the cops were working out of their old substations. Some people were getting new ones. Some people weren't. I was in the Valley, and we had the Valley Command. And I can tell you the way we administered and we made community policing work is by going out into the neighborhoods and into the communities. After we built a big fancy substation, we never met there for any reason. The police came to our neighborhoods. They came to our neighborhood association meetings. They came and talked to us. And the code enforcement gentlemen would come at the same time, and the fire people, and we would work together. And it didn't matter what kind of building it was, because we did it out in the field, and that's how we achieved community policing and cleaning up. I will tell you, the motels on Central Avenue, if anybody ever saw them, it took about 10 years, but we got rid of all of them. And it was an incredible effort. And it's nice to make new buildings. It's nice to remodel buildings. I'm a professional remodeler, award-winning, and I can tell you that that National Guard Armory needs to be torn down, period. And another good thing is to have the cop shop downtown and have open houses down there and invite people to come in that empty room in the front. I haven't toured in the back. I don't have any idea what it looks like in there, how many square footage. All I know is that we bought it to bail out Curicos when he was going under on the mortgage. And it's a cute place. They could be busy in there. You could invite people in, write down addresses. The other day I heard there was a big, huge bust on First Street around the corner from my house. And I don't know if the locals had anything to do with it. I heard it was the feds. And the other day I had problems with my neighbor, and we had a meeting out in the front of his house and on my street, when we all should have met at the police station in a little conference room and talked about how we were going to proceed with the problem and not worry about whether you have exercise equipment. You can go to the House of Pain. Nobody's told me that they've seen any of the local TCPD at the House of Pain. And then we have that big sheriff's department that we paid $750,000 to Mr. Whitehead for. They got room for exercise equipment in there. And, or build something over on that hospital property by the elementary school that we paid $670,000 for a few years ago that's empty. We got a lot of places to do really nice things, but let's pay for the $38 million hospital and the $10 million emergency room and all these other things that we have to do before we raise our taxes, because we're getting squeezed into the Vista Memory Gardens. And you might want to raise the prices there, because people be going there quickly.
Thank you. And the last person who signed up, Perry Wolf.
Perry Wolf, and I live here in Truth or Consequences. Unfortunately, I bought a place, and as time goes on and the population keeps shrinking, and I was out of town all summer, but I come back and I hear these stories on the street about spending this and spending that, and the town is shrinking in population, and what are we going to brace for? Are we going to brace for a bunch of influx of population coming in, or are we going to keep shrinking, and then we want to build a big building for, are we going to get more police when we don't need it, or I don't know, I'm a little confused. I haven't read up on it so much, but it sounds like we need so much more, like our streets are terrible, and the pool, that was a mistake, I think, should have been a permanent building, because my fellow seniors, every time there's a little lightning or something in the air, then they can't go in the pool. Should have been a permanent building on it. So that's all my thinking is now, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Seeing no one else is,
I'm neither opposed nor in favor. I'm just neutral, but I have a short statement.
okay.
Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission, my name is Ike Eastfold. I live out on North Silver, and I've talked with the chief about the facility that's under question here, and would just like to address construction costs very briefly. One of the construction costs may be dirt for a parking lot. And there's a lot of dirt going down Silver in front of our house right now, which could have a civic purpose, and that could be one of the purposes. The estimate from the project manager out there at the hospital, Jacob Kleiman of Layton Contractors, is 20,000 to 30,000 tons of dirt will be moved. And it seems to be being moved to private property on Smith, sort of across from True Value. Some of that could go to the new facility you're talking about and save money. 20,000 to 30,000 tons. Each truck is 15 tons. That requires 2,000 trucks out, another 2,000 back, 4,000 truck traffic on Silver, Murray, and Smith. Just in the short time we've been in Albuquerque, we come back and we notice potholes are growing on Silver, which was a very fine street. And the fumes and the noise and the dust and the traffic hazards are serious along that stretch there, which is a 15-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, and almost every vehicle violates it. So it seems to me, if you do go forward to this, that the loss of that community resource should be stopped, and it should be redirected to the project to save money. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, do not repeat what your husband just said, but if it's new additional information.
The thing I wanted to point out was something that you pointed out to us when we talked to you about all this, is that construction company is also using drinkable water to keep the dust down instead of the tertiary treated water, which they should buy for that. So there's another expense in the construction that the city is paying for. And if things like that go on during these constructions, there needs to be a process that analyzes all of those elements, the routing of the traffic for the construction, where the dirt's going to and coming from, who's paying for it, and tamping down the dust with tertiary treated water, which the city could then get revenue for. So that's
Thank you, Ms. Eastfeld. And if I just might, I did speak, your husband, I believe, brought that up in a conversation that we did have, and I spoke to our building inspector, and I questioned that, why aren't they using our gray water? And of course, obviously, that means their trucks would run all the way through town out. It's about 6 miles round trip. There is a meter on the hydrant, and they are paying for that water. The city is not giving them water for free. Next item then is the public hearing for the final adoption of ordinance number 687, adding section 2/276, providing a procedure for the recusal of Public Utility Advisory Board members. Manager Fuentes, and then our attorney Rubin will lead us into this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner, actually, I'll defer to Attorney Rubin to kind of go over the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. At our last meeting, the City Commission passed a motion to amend our rules of procedure for City Commission meetings whereby commissioners shall recuse themselves when a conflict of interest arises, actual or reasonably perceived. This ordinance seeks to submit the identical language to the Public Utility Advisory Board. And if it passes, I understand that I would expect to draft a similar ordinance or ordinances for the remaining boards. Since the text of the proposed ordinance is very brief, I just propose this to read it aloud and self-explanatory. Section 2-276 recusal. A member of the Public Utility Advisory Board shall recuse himself/herself from participating in a particular item on the agenda of such member, 1, has a conflict of interest as described in the Government Conduct Act 10-16-1 of state statutes, or 2, the totality of circumstances would create a reasonable public perception that such member cannot participate in that particular item in a fair and impartial manner. In such event, the member shall explain his/her reasoning prior to the item being discussed by the Public Utility Advisory Board. The recusing member shall then remove himself/herself from the meeting room prior to the commencement of any discussion of that particular agenda item, and shall not vote on such item. That's it.
Thank you, Attorney Rubin. Any comments from the commission? Concerns? Okay. Then we will go to, we have one person as a proponent and one person as an opponent, so I'll call the proponent first because that's the way it's listed down here on the sheet. Sharon Eastfeld.
Getting tired of me, I guess. I just wanted to say this is a no-brainer. I mean, anybody who's going to have financial gain in any way or the appearance of financial gain on any public body's decision should just get out of the room, period. There's no thought there. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one opponent, Ron Pecora.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor. I'm reading this, and I am a member of the Public Utility Advisory Board. And it says, a reasonable public perception. Now, who's going to make that perception? That's one question. The other thing is that if we're on the board and we're talking about solar, okay, there's 2 members on the board who have solar at home, on their homes. So they have some knowledge about solar. And if something comes up to talk about it, do those people have to recuse themselves because they have knowledge about solar? And there should be that added information from them. This is not a governing board. The Public Utility is not a governing board. We don't make rules, ordinances, resolutions. All we do is have discussions and make suggestions. So there's no money involved or advancing our self-image on anything because we don't make decisions. we refer that decision to y'all. So why this is in here, I have no idea. And again, I'm not happy about this. Y'all, whoever put this up and decided to do this, has gone around our board again. Now, y'all have done it before. Now, if you don't want the Public Utility Advisory Board to be there, dismember us. Get rid of us. And y'all can do whatever you want to do. But I'm not happy about this. I mean, if we're going to try to have a discussion, and if we're going to talk about electrical, do we need to get rid of Gil? If we're going to talk about water, do we have to have Jeff leave? And Juan, as a member of our board, not a voting member, but he is a member of our board, and he has intimate knowledge about everything. So if we're going to talk about something and a reasonable public perception, then he can't be there at all. But his input is very valuable to have a discussion. And if y'all don't want us to have discussions, put this in. Because as far as I'm concerned, we can't talk about anything because you're muting us to have a discussion about anything when it comes to utilities. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all on that, so we will close that portion of the public hearing. And the last will be the public hearing request for variance on space number 11 and 28 to be closer than 15 foot apart at Winter Haven Mobile Home Park, which is located at 2335 Broadway. Truth or consequences. The applicants are the new owners of that park, Jake Skinner and Jeremy Peck. Tracy Burnett will be our presenter on this side, who is our grant projects coordinator.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
for Jay, just for clarification for the commission, the mayor commission, and the public, are we following the batter shell process?
Yes, I believe we should be doing that, and I suggested that we should actually have two separate batter shell process. We're dealing with two different spaces and two possible different recommendations, so yes.
Okay, so if we are following the batter shell process, then we should have the oath be administered to those who are going to be speaking?
Correct. Right.
And do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask you if you want to have everybody that signed up to do it all at the same time.
I think that's appropriate, and then again, as our usual process, the staff, I guess it's case, I would use Burnett will then give her presentation, and she'll be subject to questioning, and then so on down the line with the other witnesses. Yes.
Okay, so let me explain quickly for those who have not participated in a batter shell procedure before. It is a quasi-legal procedure, and you just heard Manager Fuentes ask the attorney. Everyone will be sworn in who is signed up to speak. That would be the proponents, the opponents, and the public. Basically, we start with 4 groups. Staff will go first, proponents will go second, opponents will go third, and then the public will go fourth. And as we go, I will walk the groups through the procedure, and then you'll see how it goes. So first up is, can I have staff? Can I have Mr. Peck, Jeremy Peck, Clinton, Langdon, Comic, maybe I might be, Connie, Langdon, Glennis, Ruth, and Denise, Denny, Joe Papins, and Elena De La Torre. So that will cover us for all those people who have signed up to speak for or against the variance request for space 11 and the variance request for space 28. So if you heard your name called up, could you please stand up and let the clerk swear you in, please? Madam Clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the first presentation is staff's presentation.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners. Mr. Skinner and Mr. Peck recently purchased Winter Haven Mobile Home Park. They did come into the office and speak with Robbie, the building inspector, about what they could do within the park and to make sure they were grandfathered in on how many spaces that park had. Robbie provided them with the municipal code pertaining to manufactured mobile homes. They then moved into mobile homes to the park that did not meet the standards for distance parking, emergency vehicle access, and distance between other mobile homes. Robbie did agree to work with Mr. Skinner and Mr. Peck and allow space number 28 to remain, since it was a little less than the 2 feet of the allowable 15-foot difference. However, there was a complaint within the park of the neighbor next to 28, and so he wanted the mobile home moved out, and that's why we're here with the variance on 28. Mr. Skinner and Mr. Peck were informed they would have to remove number 11 due to its side and the code violations, and they did agree. Space 11 is in violation of the code by almost 5 feet close to the neighbors, as well as blocking emergency access to the rest of the park. And at that time, I'll
Thank
stand
you.
for questions.
Are there any questions of Tracy from Commission? Commissioner Clark?
So the first space is 2 feet out of compliance?
Yes.
And what does that 2 feet do to the emergency vehicles that need to get into that space?
The one that we're recommending does not interfere with the emergency vehicles. It doesn't stick out into the radius.
So you've had the fire department out there to look at that and make sure that it would be okay?
Robbie did,
But
yes.
number 11 is the problem, is that what
Correct.
I'm understanding? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Ashley?
Yes, Mr. Burnett, just to clarify, prior to moving in the mobile homes, the requester was given the code information and then
Correct.
went ahead and moved motorhomes in any way, knowing that they were not in compliance?
That's my understanding, yes. Robbie did give them the municipal code.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the Commission? Seeing none, Jeremy, you have an opportunity, if you want to cross-examine Tracy. Tracy, maybe you better stay up near the microphone so we pick up your voice. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and Commission. I'm Jeremy Peck, the co-owner of the Winter Haven Mobile Home Park, which is correct. We've recently purchased that mobile home park. I think we're going on about year 1. I wanted to correct some misleading information there that could be mistaken. I personally met with Mr. Travis during my due diligence period before putting an offer in on this mobile home park. I went and met with him in his office, asked for any information that would pertain to this park, the number of allowable spaces, their permissible uses, anything and everything in between. At that time, his files were very limited. He did inform us that he had recently started working for the town a couple of years prior. They're trying to clean things up. No information was given to me during that meeting. He did inform me that the park has been there and has coexisted as a mobile home park and an RV park for many, many years, well of which was in place before a lot of the new zoning ordinances and variances went into place. We introduced ourselves. I told him that there would be more than likely we'd be presenting an offer on the park.
Excuse me, Mr. Peck, this is the time to ask questions of staff. You will have an opportunity to inform the Commission of the history that you're doing right now. So if we could just kind of keep it on task, it would be fair to everyone else who's going to have an opportunity to speak.
I don't believe I have any direct questions for her at this point.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Now we have opponents. Tracy, if you could still stay there. Mr. Langdon wants to speak first, possibly? Okay, Mrs. Langdon or Ms. Langdon?
I don't know if it's a question or not.
Well, if it's a question, please address it to staff, and we'll do the best we can to answer.
I'm Connie Langdon. Thank you. I've lived in a lot of mobile home parks. Because of fires, 15 foot must be kept no matter what. We've lost homes, and if it had been 15 foot, the house next to us would have been gone. And I just don't think it's right that you can have a mobile home park set up and then somebody come in and you got to squeeze your space down because they want to add.
Okay, same thing. Okay, you're finished. All right. Route, R-O-U-T-H? I beg your pardon. Okay, no question. Okay, then the last person who can ask any questions for staff is Mr. Pipkins? I beg your pardon.
My name is Demi Jo Pipkins, and I live on Aluminum Street, 1407. We moved into Winter Haven 2 years ago.
Mr. Pickens, do you have a question for staff?
I do have a
Okay,
question.
could you please?
If it is so illegal to have a mobile home that close, because I would like to know why the fire department and why the code officer let them move those trailers in there.
Okay, that is the question?
That is the question.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, you have an answer for that. I'll get back to Mr. Pickens.
It's my understanding from Robbie that after meeting with the new owners of the park, they then moved the mobile homes in and had them set prior to Robbie being out there to look at it. So,
Shouldn't he know his job?
the mobile homes were brought into place, and he was notified after they had been moved into place. He didn't see anything on the mobile homes or any plans on the mobile homes prior to them being brought to the park.
Then he's not doing his job.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can
Yes.
I ask a question? Why is Robbie, our code enforcement, not here to answer these questions? It seems like these questions that are being asked, Tracy, she's doing her job, but she's just assuming that this was the information that was given to these people. So my question is, we're going to go back and forth here all day long, and we don't have the right person in the audience answering the right questions.
Mayor, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. That it's really unfair to ask Ms. Burnett to be answering questions that should be asked by our building inspector. And if it were me, I would ask that this whole thing be postponed until our building inspector can be here to answer the questions.
Attorney Rubin, can we do that? Can that be a process that we just postpone this until our building inspector can be here?
Would there be any objection from anyone?
Jay, I just asked, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I asked Juan, Manager Fuentes, why isn't Robbie here?
And Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Robbie did have already a prior commitment when this was, remember this, because it is a variance, letters were mailed out specifically on this date to the surrounding property owners. And when Robbie advised me that he wasn't going to be able to be here, I also asked that question, but he and Tracy got together, reviewed all the information and material, and they both felt very confident that Tracy could at least represent the information and that was being presented today. But again, it is the will of the commission, but that is the reason why Mr. Travis, due to a conflict in the scheduling, was unable to be here. But again, if the commission wishes to do that, then we'll just have to make sure that we follow the proper notification process for rescheduling, or we can move forward.
Attorney Rubin? Maybe ask Tracy, do you feel comfortable answering these questions? And do you feel that you have enough of the background and the knowledge to be able to proceed with this?
Mayor and Commissioners, prior to the variance coming up, I'd actually been with Robbie out to the property, and we were looking at the trailers at that time. It is something, because he is in and out of the office, out on inspections and stuff, I have been taking an interest in some of the building inspector information, so I've been going out to properties with him, and this is one area that I had previously gone out to.
Okay. Well, Mayor Pro Tem, we can do two things. You could make a motion to postpone, or we can continue.
I do not feel comfortable. I feel comfortable with Tracy. She does a good job at what she does, but this is not her department and her field, and I personally don't feel comfortable continuing with this process at this point. So I would move that we postpone this until Mr. Travis can be available to answer these questions for these people.
I have a motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
I'll second that motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Excuse me, Mr. Peck, please, thank you. We're open for discussion here on the commission. I do have a question. Jay, is this legal? Can we do this?
Oh, I think so. It's a discretion. Again, you might want to file as an objection. If this prejudices anybody's position by postponing it, that's maybe the one thing you might want to take into account before you rule on it.
I have a couple comments I'd like
Okay,
to make.
Commissioner.
I think it's very unfair to the owners of this park right at this moment, because it's prejudicing my viewpoint right here, not having my building inspector here. So I don't want to make a decision that might be for or against whatever you're doing without the real professional here. Tracy, I love dearly. She covers almost every base in the entire city. She's like the right-hand man to our city manager in many aspects. I don't want to put her in a precarious position either for the owners of this park if we vote nay or A for this. So that being said, that's why I'm going along with Mayor Pro Tem's comment, because I think that we need a real professional here in the city who's like the end, he's the end when you ask a question. So for that reason, I'm trying to be as fair as I can, not only to the city, but to you also as the owner of that park. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem, if I might ask Attorney Rubin another question. Would we, if the vote carries, and to postpone,
Yes.
to put it on the September 27th meeting, which will be starting at 1 o'clock on September 27th, will there be enough time to legally notify the people that are involved, so we've done due diligence from our end?
Well, I think what the motion would be, we would recess what we're already doing now to continue this for the 27th. That way it's kind of, when everybody's here, so everybody has notice of what the intentions are.
Okay.
So it would be to recess the public hearing until the 27th, and everybody has notice of, like I just said, and then that's how you do it.
Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem
So
Whitehead,
then I
could you
amend my motion
Thank
to
you.
recess until the meeting of the 27th
Yes.
at 1 o'clock to continue this and have our building inspector in-house at that time to answer questions, in all fairness to the park owner as well as the residents that live in that area.
I have an amended motion.
And I'll re-second the
Commissioner
amended
Clark,
motion.
seconds. Any further discussion, Commissioner Hess?
Yes, Mayor, I have one more discussion point. I would like to see at this meeting the fire chief, mainly because if we're going to go against code, the fire code, and I don't know which supersedes what, and I would like to have the fire chief's testimony here, so we can weigh that into the balance.
Very good
Good
point,
point.
Commissioner.
Good point. Very good. Right on. All right. There is no discussion, Mr. Peck, unfortunately, right now from the public anymore. We're about to vote. So I have a motion for postponement of this public hearing for the variances on space 11 and 28 at Winter Haven Park to be postponed and continued on September 27th at our 1 o'clock meeting. I have a motion. I have a second. We have had discussion. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And I apologize for those who have spent the energy and time to make sure that you are here for this particular hearing. But I believe that Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead is absolutely right on. This will make it a level playing field and really fair, and doesn't necessarily put staff under undue pressure as well. So thank you.
Mayor, Mr. Green, I didn't get the opportunity to object until you guys lied before you made your vote?
It's a vote. It was a vote, Mr. Peck. Thank you, sir. And we will save the sign-in sheets. We'll give these to Mayor Pro Tem, to the city clerk. Okay. Give me 1 second. That ends that portion of the public hearings. And now we are on to G, ordinances, resolutions, and zoning. G1, discussion action, final adoption of ordinance number 686, authorizing issuance and sale of $2,188,146 City of Truth and Consequences municipal gross receipts tax revenue bonds for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, furnishing, equipping, rehabilitating, and making additions to or making improvements to a law enforcement facility. Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, so the ordinance before you, again, it's just for the authorization to issue and the sale of the bond If there's any final questions for Linda or or representatives from George K. Baum, we certainly will stand for those questions. But I also just want to kind of make a clarification that Mr. Ron Finn made a statement in a public comment about a study in asbestos on that facility, which has already been looked at. And we do have a study, and it's not going to be a significant amount. So that's already in the planning stages, sir. Thank you very much. So we certainly can make those available to anybody in the public. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we can certainly stand for any final questions before the vote.
Okay, thank you. Any concerns or questions? Last gas station before going on the desert from my fellow commissioners. Hearing none, I will stand for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to approve for the final adoption of ordinance number 686, authorizing issuance and sale of $2,188,146 City of Truth and Consequences municipal gross receipts tax revenue bonds for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, furnishing, equipping, rehabilitating, making additions to, or making improvements to a law enforcement facility.
I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler. I need a second. I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Yes.
Honorable Ralph Heschler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Frankel?
Thank you. It moves forward. It is unanimous. Number 2, discussion action, final adoption of ordinance number 687, adding section 2-276, providing a procedure for the recusal of Public Utility Advisory Board members. Manager Fuentes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, again, we've heard the presentation from Attorney Jay Rubin in regards to the modification of section 2-276. If approved, staff will present a similar ordinance that will amend the rest of the boards with similar language. So with that, we'll stand for any final questions.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns?
I have some comments.
Commissioner Clark.
I was a standalone no on this one the last meeting, and I'm going to be a standalone no again. But I want to tell you why in advance instead of in arrears.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
One, this says Public Utility Advisory Board. It does not include the Impact Fee Board, which is part of the Public Utility Advisory Board. I also have a problem with the fact that this was not a broad spectrum for all boards instead of just picking one. And why did we pick PUAB first? Why didn't we pick the Arts Council? Why didn't we pick some of these other ones? Why did we target PUAB? Second, I really like, our third, I like Mr. McCorrick's comments that one, these boards don't make decisions, we do. You bring recommendations to us. If there was, for example, somebody had the integrity on a board and they realized that trying to coerce your board to make a decision because there would be a financial gain, which is the issue that I hear from the lawyer all the time, and that person was making a real issue, I would hope that the rest of the board would say, you know, you're going to stand to gain on this one. Why don't you step out of this for a minute and let us talk? That being said, because it was a targeted board for an undisclosed reason, and my feeling is that fair is fair, there should have been straight across the board, as Manager Fuentes said, that the next step would be all boards. Can we do all boards together at the same time? Can we word this so that it includes the Impact Fee Board, because that's left out? Those are my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have concerns? I have a question.
I'd like to think that we staff these boards with our brightest thinkers and our most ethical members of the community, and we rely on them for their input. And with the same amount of integrity that we rely on them for their information that they rely to us, I'd like to think that we would be able to count on them to use their own moral compass as a judge for when to recuse themselves, and especially since they're not in a position at all to financially profit from this information. All they're doing is giving a recommendation. It boggles me that we would stifle these minds from being able to share their knowledge when they have nothing to gain. That's what I have to say.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Martin.
I also have concerns because, again, during public comment, it was stated that common sense says that when we know that we should recuse ourselves because of a conflict of interest, we should do that. It shouldn't have to be put in an ordinance, a resolution, written in paper. And again, with these boards that we put in place, we put them in place as advisory boards. And I'm sure that all of these people that come before us to bring their presentations and their comments are using that better judgment, and they're not here to do any wrong or misunderstanding to our community. And so, I do have concerns about that also, and I thank these boards.
Okay, thank you. I think you all know how I feel about volunteerism and citizens getting involved and taking ownership in their community. I want to address a couple of things I heard. I guess I'm the old guy up here, so I'm going to claim seniority from 2008 moving forward. And I have seen commissioners involved in discussions where there was potential financial gain to them, and they did not recuse themselves. And we did not have a methodology on how to do that. And I am not going to let the individual, for example, Mr. Picard, was talking about knowledge about solar. And yes, we want to capture that knowledge. And we want to have people who have passion, and that's why they serve on these different city boards. But there's a difference between sharing that knowledge and also pushing. For example, if the city were buying back energy from a person who has a solar panel on their roof at 2 cents a kilowatt hour, and someone was promoting that the city should really buy that back at 4 cents an hour, that's the real value of that energy going back into the system. Well, that person then would stand to gain financially. And when this was originally brought up, I don't want to see this, and I'm hearing from my commissioners, I don't want to see this defeated, because I think that we need, as our city will grow and new people come in, that we have rules and procedures and guidelines that are the touchstone for them to help monitor their own interaction on the boards that they choose to serve on. So I'm going to suggest that rather than have this defeated, and then we cannot bring it back for 6 months if we vote something down, that we bring back and not vote on this. We postpone this vote. Jay, Mr. Rubin, tell me if I'm wrong on this one. Can we postpone voting on this and have an ordinance that would be all-inclusive and all-encompassing of all of the boards? Since we have already passed this for the city commission, the reason I believe, and I will tell you, I was the one that said, let's start with the Public Utility Advisory Board, only because they were the most active and not taking anything away from any other board. So please don't jump at me for that. But they are active, and we do rely on them, and they do make recommendations to us. And I'll tell you something, even though we have a vote, Mr. Petard, I put a lot of credence to what you guys do and what you recommend, because you're doing the homework. You're peeling back that onion, as the expression goes, and it makes our job easier. Not that we sit back and don't do anything, but it's great to have another set of eyes and interest on something. So, Jay, my question is, can we postpone this, rewrite this ordinance that might clear up some of the concerns that I'm hearing, and bring it back on the 27th?
If we're talking about rewriting the ordinance to include all the boards, for example.
Yes.
I think you'll have to start over, quite honestly. I don't think you can just go to advertising, just talk about one board and then come back. I'm sorry to say that, but I think you'd have to start over. You have to come back. What you could do, well, I guess you could actually tell me you need to go to, you authorize me to draw up a board for publication, but since that's on the agenda. I think Mr. Mayor, you have to start over.
Okay, Manager
Yeah,
Fuentes, any
Mr. Mayor, and
suggestions?
just for clarification, I believe we amended the rules of procedure for the commission.
We did.
And this same language appears in the commissioner's rule of procedure. So we just did that and we did that through resolution, so it wasn't necessarily an ordinance that we needed to follow through. So this was applying to not just the commission, but all of the boards. And as the mayor indicated, the intent of this ordinance is not to stifle the thoughts and opinions of the board. But I think when there is a clear indication of any financial gain from any individual, then that's where the line is defined. And I think that needs to be made very clear. The intent is not to say somebody who has knowledge in solar or water, wastewater, or street, to not be able to share that. It's just when they're advocating or voting on an issue that they clearly could gain from that financially. And I think that applies even to not just this commission, but actually applies to anybody, including myself, advocating for something that they could financially gain. So, again, it was something that was added to the rules of procedure for the commission. And so the intent was, if this passes with this one board, then obviously there's the will from the commission to proceed forward with the rest of the boards, and that could be done all in one ordinance.
And I think, in addition to that is, contrary to stifling discussion, I was thinking you want to have something like this to give guidance to the board members to really what you can and can't do. I mean, the impression I got when we adopted this at the city commission meeting, for the city commission at the last meeting, was there was actually a sense of relief. Okay, here, now we finally have something in writing as to really what we can and can't do. So that's what I was getting.
So let me ask you a question, Attorney Rubin. If I were to make a motion and no one seconded it, this item would die, for lack of a second. Where does that put us with bringing it back again? Do we have to start from square one? Can you flush it out, as manager was talking about?
Okay.
No, I would make a motion, there would be no second, so it dies, for lack of a second. If you don't have a second, you can't vote.
Right, no action is taken.
Right. I don't want to have a vote, because if the vote is no, then we lose 6 months, because we cannot bring an ordinance back that has been voted down for 6 months.
Well, I guess what I was saying is if I did start over, you're not stuck with the 6-month rule, because
Okay.
I'm crafting a brand new ordinance which is different than this one. So the fact that you're voting down this particular ordinance does not prevent me from bringing a new ordinance to you at the next meeting.
Okay. Any comments from the commission on the direction where I think you guys want to go?
I think Mr. Rubin just answered our question. You can bring a new ordinance at the next meeting, so.
Okay. Just start the process all over again.
I just have another
Commissioner
comment,
Clark.
and it's something that you said, Mayor, and back to Mr. Pecoric also, is, these boards don't make decisions. And I know how difficult it is to find volunteers to get on these boards. And like Commissioner Frankel said, we have to be very, very grateful for anybody who would volunteer to be on a board. And at the end of the day, if Mr. Pecoric came up and said the PUA board and the impact fee board have decided that you should buy back solar, wouldn't it be my comment to Mr. Pecoric to say, did you convince that board so that you could make money on this? And then I would talk to my commissioners and say, I think that board was coerced or something like that. But I make the decision, not Mr. Pecoric, on whether or not the city is going to buy back that electricity. I believe that the commission does need to have information on us, what is ethical and what is not ethical, that we would walk out into the parking lot. That's one of my favorite places, as you well know. But that Mr. Pecoric should walk out into the parking lot because we're talking about solar doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I just want you to be very, very comfortable that you can talk about solar all day long on the PUAB board, and if I don't like it, I don't have to say yes. That's it. Thank you.
A point well taken, Commissioner Clark. However, I most respectfully will disagree with you on one point, is that if you allow someone who has a potential financial interest of moving a vote in a certain direction, they might recuse themselves from the vote, but they have already poisoned the well by
Absolutely, we know.
by participating in that discussion. And I do believe that, and I don't think we can praise volunteers often enough and long enough. That said, the PUAB board has quasi-legal power. For example, they have the power to change a development of up to 5% on a development plan. And we've gone through that with someone before. So they do have that power. They don't have to bring that to the commission. So I think what we're trying to do is to create an environment that everyone understands what the rules of quote-unquote engagement are, how you handle yourselves, when it's appropriate to participate, and when it's not appropriate to participate. And I think that was the reason that this came up in the first place, because in the past, present commissioners excluded, we have had commissioners who have participated in discussions and not voted. And I thought that was grossly unfair to the other commissioners that were there.
Mayor, could a crafting of a new ordinance suggest something, Attorney Rubin, that as a commission, we respect the people who are on our boards, and that we would also respect that if they felt that there was financial gain to be made, that they would have the integrity to remove themselves from trying to coerce the rest of their board, and leave it as vague as that, and leave it on the onus on the member of the board as opposed to us mandating one way or the other.
Attorney Rubin?
I'm not sure. See, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure it's enforceable, though, Commissioner Clark.
Well, I don't know that anything is enforceable. I mean, how do you know? I mean, how enforceable is this?
Well,
Yeah, if I could,
excuse me, Attorney Rubin, Commissioner Haslund, yes, sir.
I've read the Government Conduct Act, and it gives very specific examples, and it would fall in line with anything that we could see in any of these boards. And so, if there is a clear transgression of the Government Conduct Act, then that should be enforceable, and we should ask that person to recuse himself, or that person should recuse themselves. But we can point to the Government Conduct Act as the authority, and that's what we should do.
Good point. That could be the Bible. Any further discussion? All right, I will. So, Attorney Rubin, just so I understand, if we take a vote on this ordinance and it is defeated, you can craft another ordinance and we're not restricted to the 6 months.
I believe that's true, yes. It is true, yes.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear the word believe, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're correct.
Thank you, Attorney Rubin. Okay, I will stand for a motion then on item 2, which is the final adoption of ordinance number 687, adding section 2-276, providing a procedure for the recusal of Public Utility Advisory Board members. Hearing no motion being made, it dies. Thank you. Next item is discussion action ordinance number 686 for publication amending section 3-6 in parentheses A pertaining to sale of animals.
688, I believe.
I beg your pardon?
688. I believe you said 686.
I got 3-6A.
Did you hear 686?
Is that a typo? Oh, order number 688 for
Yeah.
publication amending section 3-6A pertaining to sale of animals on public property. Attorney Rubin. All right, let's just wait for 1 second, Attorney, until we have some folks that will be leaving. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rubin,
Yeah.
thank you.
We have an ordinance, section 3-6, which pertains to sale of animals, and it pretty briefly just reads that no person shall display, sell, offer for sale, or give away or otherwise distribute any animal upon Main Street, sidewalk, public park, or private business, unless that private business is required by a license. I was asked to prepare an ordinance that would make an exception for goldfish. So the proposed ordinance will be just what I read, except that I have an insertion that will read, no person shall display, sell, or offer for sale, barter, give away, or otherwise dispose of any animal, with the exception of goldfish, on any street, sidewalk, public park, or private business, unless said private business is properly licensed.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the reading of the proposed ordinance for publication. Any concerns, any questions?
I'd like to just share a little brief story of Lake Clamato, which for those who are not familiar with it. Lake Clamato is up in Catron County. Beautiful lake for fishing out in the wilds. They had a problem about 15 years ago with anglers bringing in goldfish as bait. Within a very short period of time, these goldfish took over Lake Clamato and pushed all the other breeds to near extinction. In order to remediate this goldfish problem, they had to introduce a new species to the lake, the tiger muskie, whose favorite food was the goldfish. But there was such quantities of goldfish in Clamato Lake that as the waves would move across the water, they would turn bright orange with streams of goldfish as far as the eye could see. And it's only now, after 15 years or so, have they been able to remediate this problem. The tiger muskie is now a sport fish in the lake. Eventually it will go away because it is a sterile fish. It doesn't reproduce, and eventually they'll be done with this goldfish problem. But the ability for goldfish to move, to get dumped into Ralph Edwards Pond, and to get moved into the Rio Grande, and to suddenly have Caballo Lake turn into Lake Clamato is a real likelihood. So I just wanted to share that story.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you did. Thank you. Commissioner Ashland?
I would just like to know the history of this. Manager Fuentes, give us any clue on why we're even addressing this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So last year there's an event every year that for the past 18 plus years, as one of the events they do offer as a prize for the kids goldfish. Last year it was brought, it became an issue, and the event went forward. It is coming up again, and so as with any issue, a request was made, well, is there some consideration for addressing this matter? And so it is before the commission, because if otherwise, as the commissioner have indicated, well, if the code does not permit it, then it can't be permitted. So that's why it's before the commission, because again, it has been the tradition for 18 plus years, and if it's not going to be any more allowed, it probably shouldn't have been allowed for the last 18 years, then it needs to be amended. Otherwise, it needs to be made very clear. So that is the history, because there is an event that happens every year where goldfish were given as a prize.
Mr. Mayor, you say that the goldfish are given as a prize. This says to sell the goldfish. So what's the difference? It says to offer for sale, better giveaway or otherwise. Oh, giveaway, yeah. Okay, with the exception of goldfish, okay.
I have a couple of comments.
Commissioner Clark.
Well, I know that the mayor knows this, and maybe some of you already know, but I raise fish, and I started raising fish when we were thinking about putting tilapia in our wastewater treatment plant many years ago. I still have 3 tanks. Deb, there's 2 fish that are the most inhumanely treated that I am aware of. One is the betta, and one is the goldfish. Those 2 fish are put in a bowl. There is no filtration. There is no heat regulation. The bowl's not cleaned properly. The water is not clean. A goldfish is one of the biggest mess makers of all of the fish you can possibly get. That needs to be cleaned almost every day. I agree with Commissioner Frankel's comment. There is nothing worse than a junk fish being taken over. A lot of people flush snakes and fish down the toilet. So we're going to give all of these to Jesus to be managing that in our wastewater treatment plant. If I were to give away something to a kid that the parents are going to have to take care of, why can't I give something to a kid that the kid's really going to appreciate and love and take care of? If they want a puppy, mom's got to say yes. If they want a fish, mom's got to say yes. Put them in a tank with a filtration. I have a Beta. My Beta has its own tank, this big. It's got its own filtration system. One fish, 10 gallons. One Beta normally has this itty-bitty little container. I think there's a better gift that can be given to kids than a fish. And I think it's really kind of funny that it's on our list, talking about fish, but I wouldn't take a goldfish home without giving it its very own 10-gallon tank. And I really appreciate your comment. I think it's very well taken. And yours, Commissioner Franco, because I know how junk fish get into the waters, and we don't need them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Park. I will never look at a goldfish again, the way I have in the past. Thank you very much. You've just ruined my entire childhood. Thank you. All I remember about goldfish was when I was a kid, there was a card game called Go Fish. And that's as close as I like to get the goldfish. Are there any other concerns brought up? I think we've heard some really valid points. And I am glad, I am proud of my fellow commissioners, because obviously the fish can't speak for themselves and they need spokespersons, and you guys, both of you, did a great job. So I appreciate that. So, anyone want to go fishing? Anyone would like to make a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we disapprove ordinance number 688, the publication amending section 3-6, parentheses A, pertaining to the sale of animals on public property, particularly the exception of goldfish.
I'll second that.
So, might you amend, Commissioner Heschler, could you amend disapprove for publication? Okay, so we're going to have, so it's amended, disapprove for publication.
My second is
And we have the
amended.
same second. Any further discussion? So this is for publication, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. And thank my fellow commissioners for actually having a heart, which I know we all have, but it's great to be on display as well in times like this. Discussion action, resolution number 0717/18, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority Water Trust Board for water distribution mainline reconstruction. Whew, that's a mouthful. Tracy Burnett, Grants Projects Coordinator.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners. This is a standard required resolution by the Water Trust Board in order for us to submit an application. I think in your packet there it explained the area. The application amount will be $800,000. I worked with the Water Department and we looked at the asset management plan, and Arnie is here to speak on that behalf as well. If there's the areas that he felt were the most critical for our water line replacement. And if there's any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission, either to Tracy or Arnie, about this proposed application? Seeing none and hearing,
Just one question.
Sure.
Ms. Burnett, can you tell me what our match would be on this?
It all depends on, of course, how much we're awarded. So you're looking at, it's all variable at the time that they do it. The loan portion, no less than 10%. It depends on our median household income at the time. It's a long process for Water Trust Board to do a notice of intent, and then you do an application, and then you have to do a readiness, and they start reviewing that at that time. I can tell you that once they make the grant, award the grant, that information at that time will come out.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion for authorizing approving submission.
Authorizing the resolution.
Right, number
Number 0717/18, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority Water Trust Board for water distribution mainline reconstruction. Oh, I love this, Stacy. Thank you.
I have a very happy motion by Mayor Clark and a second by Mayor Clark, Commissioner Clark, and Commissioner Franco. I think everyone should be in there. And any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Eschler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Franco?
Yes. Thank you. It carries unanimously. We have postponed the next item, number 6, and we have postponed the next item, number 7. So moving on to new business, discussion action. Public.
No,
Number 5.
we're on number 6.
Number 5, we postponed 6.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I checked off the wrong one. Thank you for that catch. We don't want to take the limelight away from our clerk treasurer. Number 5, resolution number 0817/18, designating the retention and disposition schedules and the method of destruction for the records for the City of Truth and Consequences. Ms. Canton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. My pen is gone, okay. For the sake of those listening, I'll go ahead and read the background in your commission action form. The current resolution that designates which retention schedules will be used needs to be updated. We are working diligently with all departments to do the proper destruction of records, which has not been done since the early 90s. And quite frankly, we're about out of space. We're having trouble figuring out where to put things. The changes in the resolution would allow me to select the retention schedules that will be used in the process of destruction. Although municipalities are not required to use them, I've currently recommended for this session of destruction the New Mexico Administrative Code retention schedules that were approved prior to an amendment in October of 2015, which repealed some of the schedules used by municipalities. The Clerks and Finance Officers Association also is working on an overall retention schedule for municipalities, which could be done as early as November. I'll be serving on that committee so that we could put together the best retention, and those will need to be adopted by the municipalities. So therefore, we're asking the commission to approve allowing me at this time to select the schedule that would be the best one to use. They're all somewhat similar, but we need to actually designate one. In addition to the retention schedules that are used, we are requesting the commission to allow us to proceed with using the destruction methods listed in the resolution. So it'll give us the flexibility to use the most cost-effective method we can. Being that if we can just bury the records with sanitation when we have a smaller batch of records, we would do that because it's more cost-effective for us. So with that, I'll open it for any questions you might have.
Thank you, and thank you for the explanation. Any questions or concerns from the commission?
Just burying records with sanitation, does that mean that somebody else has access to it before it actually gets buried?
That's where it gets a little touchy. When you bury a record, you usually do it when you have a lot smaller batch, and right now we have 336 boxes. You don't ever want to bury a record that has personally identifiable information, such as your socials, your date of birth, anything to that effect. You definitely want those shredded and destroyed a little differently. To bury a record, basically, if you had just a few boxes, it would go with the transfer station truck to the landfill, and they would be put on the pile prior to dumping the sanitation truck. So they would bury it with our own other trash. So that's the burying method.
So are you going to go through each one of the boxes to make sure there's no incriminating information in there before you just...
We already have, yes.
You have. So that is leaving the discretion to the city clerk's office.
Yes. And with the big mass ones that we're doing now, we'll be using, we won't be using the burying method.
It would seem like an awful lot of labor to have to go through every single page in there. Can't we just torch it?
True.
Any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, I will need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 0817/18 designating the retention and disposition schedules and the methods of destruction for the records for the city of Truth or Consequences as presented by Renee Canton, our city clerk treasurer.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second. Second. I have a second by Commissioner Hessler. Any further concerns or questions? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, Madam Clerk, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Fish?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Franco?
Yes. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Now, moving on to new business. Discussion action, Public Arts Advisory Board appointment. Ms. Canton.
Gosh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. The Public Arts Board had an expiration of terms. We have quite a few for our boards. We have published each of them that we have vacancies currently. The Public Arts Board has one application. We took it back to their Public Arts Board, and they're recommending approval of, I don't have his application in front of me.
Andy Underwood.
Andy Underwood at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or concerns? Hearing none, I will entertain a thankful motion to Mr. Underwood to want to be involved in the art scene and Truth or
I'll
Consequences.
second that, thank you.
I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Sorry to lose Gia Apple from the community, but Andy Underwood is a great addition. So we will move forward with that. The next item, discussion action, number 2 under new business H, joint powers agreement with Sierra County and Elephant Butte for minimum pool bid. Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, so before you, we talk about the establishment of a joint effort with some of our local entities regarding the minimum pool. And in your package, you have a JPA that has been approved by the county, has been approved by the city of Elephant Butte. And what's important to note on this JPA is that there is no financial obligation by the entities at this time. I mean, I think what it is just, it's an intent to formalize our efforts towards establishing a minimum pool at Elephant Butte Lake. And we are just in discussions with the county manager and others, what would be a good mechanism for funding this project. So what we're asking right now is just for the city to be part of this effort in a formal manner through this JPA. And obviously, any financial obligations or any financial efforts will have to come back to each of the respective entities. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from the commission? I would just like to point out, and I appreciate, because that was my major concern, is funding of acquisition and maintenance, and that was brought up at the meeting that we all attended, most of us attended out at the Albert Lyons, and Commissioner Clark kind of spearheaded some of those concerns, that at some particular point, once this JPA is approved, we will need someone from the commission or an appointee to represent this commission on this board. So I just would like for you just to keep that in mind, because this will come back to us again. And we will need someone who likes water and goldfish and to serve on that board for the commission. So that said, I will make a motion to approve the JPA with Sierra County and Elephant Butte for the minimum pool bid.
I'll make that motion.
And I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Last item under new business, discussion action approval of the records inventory list for destruction, and this is what I think Commissioner Clark was alluding to.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. When I make the subject a little longer, I have time to get back around.
I'll talk slower, I'm
No,
sorry.
that's okay, that's okay. As mentioned earlier, for the retention schedule resolution, we're well on our way. to attempting to make some room for our records by proceeding with the proper destruction. The attached list for 2016, which was logged in last year, has 49 boxes, and the 2017 list, which consists of mostly finance, utility, and payroll records, has 287 boxes, for a total of 336 that we're requesting approval to proceed with destruction. The list has also been sent to the city attorney for review to make sure there are not any documents that may need to be held for legal purposes. And we are working on the process for destruction, and I know our finance director had a good contact where on the State Records Center and Archives who might be able to help us destroy too. So we're looking at that and the best process, and we may have to bring a budget adjustment for how much it will cost, but either way, we need to proceed with this and get a good destruction going through. I failed to add that I'm not the only custodian of records in the city for our code. The police chief is for the police department, and the municipal judge is for the municipal court, and we've all been working very closely. As a matter of fact, I'm helping train all of their employees on how to do it. So with that, I stand for any questions you may have and request approval of the list.
Any questions, concerns? I just have one. Have you spoken to the police chief and/or the judge to see if there might be any money in their budgets, since you alluded to this cost that we don't know what it's going to be, to help us out with this, since some of the records will be their records?
We did, and we have discussed that in the past, but this one's only finance.
Okay.
And actually, we have a call out for all the other departments so we can all get working on them. So I perceive having another one within the next month or two. And at that point, yes, that has been discussed and considered.
A question, would it not serve us better financially if we consolidated everyone at one time? So if you have to contract out to a shredding company, a document shredding company, because the sensitivity of the information, that there might be some type of economy of scale, so to speak. And I don't know how much the police chief and the judge actually has. I'm quite sure it's not what we have, but does that make any sense, or?
It does, absolutely does, and we are definitely looking into that. Good. Because once you come up with the volumes and such, you have, if you use a shredding company, you have to pay for trips.
Exactly right.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add, and I do want to commend the finance department and the clerk's office for this initial effort. I think, one of the challenges sometimes when we tend to increase the scope, make it in all umbrella, it tends to, some departments are faster than others, and it bogs down the others. And if you've gone to the finance office, they have boxes and boxes stacked in their office. So I want to, kudos to them, and as well as the clerk's office for helping and just getting at least this started. This is actually the start of making sure every department now follows this example and gets those old records destroyed.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. There is a company called Shred-it. I know they put boxes. When I was with the county, we used to have the boxes, and then we used to share the expense with the clerk's office and every, the other departments, the assessor's office. And these are locked boxes, and we just put our stuff that needs to be shredded into these boxes that are locked, and we can't get them back out. And then the company comes every month or every other month. Sometimes we were paying every other month. So it was very inexpensive for us. So that might be something we could look into after we've taken care of all of the overload that we have at this time. So, I mean, that's just something to look into, to have a box there in every office, the police department, the municipal court, and your office, and just throw this stuff in there. And if they need to come, like I said, once a month, they can come and pick up everybody's box, or every other month, depending on what the load is at that time. And that's a safe way of doing things.
It definitely is, to where we can just eventually make it almost even a consent item, to where we have 6 boxes that we'll put in that, if we can share the cost. I've actually had the Elephant Butte clerk and the Williamsburg clerk, interested in sharing costs too. So we have a lot of opportunities for cost sharing. And so we definitely will look into all of
But
that.
just for clarification, Renee, I think it's also important that some of these records have to be approved by resolution to be destroyed.
They all have to be.
So I think, putting a box, we can kind of, it still has to be inventoried.
Right.
And it has to be properly documented.
Correct.
And presented to the commission. We can't just put a box on the side, because then if in the future anybody requests a record, for example, one of these boxes, we can say, sorry, it's already been destroyed, it's a retention. So for our protection and for the city's protection, we will always have to inventory and document and get it approved by resolution.
So.
That's what I meant by the consent item.
Clerk Hatton, do we still do what we used to do 100 million years ago and microfiche everything so that there is still a record if somebody wanted a copy? And two, can you convince me that you're not going to be putting bank statements into a landfill? They're going to be either shredded or burnt?
Yes. Yes and yes.
Thank you, that's all I needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the records inventory list for destruction as presented by Renee Kenton, our clerk treasurer.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Heschler. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. It carries unanimously. We're now on to report, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make it very brief. At 1 o'clock, we do have the continuance of the Sierra Vista Hospital Governing Board meeting. You all might have seen an email from PRC Chairman or Commissioner Sandy Jones about a public, press conference at 5:30. If the majority of the commissioners will be in attendance, I would ask the clerk, short notice, to post a potential quorum notice. Just in case. And just tomorrow, there will be the spaceport, as it was mentioned in public comment, legislative meeting, which starts at 9 a.m., finishes, I think, around 9 to 3. We'll be up there at 1 o'clock. And again, just want to make that really quick announcement. I'm sure most of you all know already. Last week, we did have a KRWG forum along with Keith Hasselman, who did a kind of forum with different members from the community about the potential impact of, the spaceport and what we see happening in TRC. It was well attended by a diverse group. Unfortunately, Commissioner Franco couldn't attend, so I took your seat there. But I think it was a very informative forum, and I think at some point it's going to be obviously published in the KRWG television as a program and on the website. And we did get the $150,000 for the Fuel Farm Phase 3. So that project will be finalized by next year, which has been in the works for a number of years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Attorney Rubin, any report?
Yes, a couple of sales announcements. Kind of interesting. What we have is that occasionally, the commission will pass a resolution calling for construction of a dangerous building. And what will happen then, of course, based upon the resolution, because of the process, the dangerous building is then removed, and then we will impose a lien on the property for the cost that we have of removing the building. And then I will then be tasked with the job of filing a complaint to foreclose the lien, so we can therefore get our money back for our cost of removal. So I've gone through the process of 2 different properties. I want to make an announcement of a couple sales we have pending. The first one, there will be a foreclosure sale at the Sierra County Courthouse, the front entrance, on September 28th at 10 o'clock. At 8:08, the property that will be auction will be 8:08 in April. So again, it's September 28th at 10 o'clock. And the other property is going to be the auction property will be 309 First Street. And that will be auctioned on October 19th at 10 o'clock. So I want everybody to be aware of this, because certainly we would encourage members of the public who are interested to attend the auction. See what happens. So just want everybody to be aware of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
No questions, no report.
Commissioner Heschler.
Yes, just one quick one. I'd like to just remind everyone to please, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, please download the Sierra County Information app. Has wonderful information on the app itself. I did it this morning about maps of Sierra County, lodging, dining, attractions, contacts and businesses, Spaceport America, art and shopping, outdoor adventures, state parks, hot springs, and events. Every tourist that comes to this community is going to want to know where to go and what to do. This is a wonderful app in order for them to access that information. So I would just remind everybody that to get into the App Store, it's free, and download the Sierra County app.
Great information, thank you. Probably we should send out a PSA to maybe some newspapers and other places where we can get this information out there free of charge. Maybe our tourism event coordinator might work on that or something along those lines.
To that one?
That one. From Wisconsin.
Oh, I was pointing to the clock. I don't want to be rude.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner? That's great information, thank you. Thank you very much. Commissioner Clark.
Just really quickly, a question for the clerk. Was there a potential quorum notice posted for the F-16 meeting this afternoon also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was. Commissioner Frank. Okay, I'll be real quick. Again, we're talking about it September 13th today. They said no. 6 to 8 at the Civic Center. This is about the proposed area of flyover for the F-16s. It is not, from what I've been given to understand, and unless I've misread the last email, this is not going to be a presentation by Holloman Air Force Base and personnel. This is what they call a listening tour, that if you have concerns, this is your opportunity to express them. So yesterday they were in Alamogordo, today they're in TRC, tomorrow they'll be in Las Cruces. September 27th, we have our meeting because Manager Fuentes and myself have a date in court at 9 o'clock. We will be asking that the meeting be moved to 1 p.m. on that same date, and I apologize publicly to KCHS for any disruption in their scheduling that we might cause by this one-off move. In relationship to Mr. Fenn's comments, I did get notification from Spaceport America that a new tour provider has been chosen, and they are looking for starting operations the weekend of October 28th, and that's what they're working towards. In relationship to the name, I don't do computers as Mr. Fenn does. This might just be a DBA for an existing corporation, which I believe it probably is, and it's unimportant who the existing corporation is at this particular moment. But it is real, and I'd like to have maybe the authority, since we've all voted together on this, to speak on behalf of my fellow commissioners, to thank the citizens of Truth or Consequences for being patient, having some faith in your commissioners and the decisions that we made. And I know that we went dark in that visitor center January 1st, and it's going to be like 10 months until they got a new tour provider, but this is not like going into a town and finding a place you can buy a hamburger. The choices are limited, and you have to get the right people, because they're representing not only Spaceport America, but they also, because they're going to be here at the visitor center, some way they're kind of representing our community. So I was glad that Spaceport America did their due diligence, chose the right company, the right person to spearhead this effort. And on behalf of my fellow commissioners, I just want to thank the citizens of TRC for your continued support. Spaceport is there, it exists, it's alive, it's going to get bigger and better and grow, and we should get the benefit of that increased tourism business to all of our stores and shops and lodgings and spas here in TRC. And the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to thank those group of people who took it upon themselves to gather household goods that are needed for flood victims and drove a straight truck down to Houston. I mean, I thought that was amazing. You know, we're a far cry from Houston, Texas, and someone talked about, I think it was Commissioner Clark, came up with it, he said, you know, we should be advertising our weather. You know, we don't get hurricanes, we don't get
Should I point at the
cyclones.
clock again?
We don't get this, we don't get that. And I thought, what a great idea, except I thought, you know, to do it tomorrow might be kind of tap dancing on someone's grave, so to speak. But it's something that we might want to keep in our dialogue, that when we talk about the assets of TRC and Sierra County, weather and the lack of bad weather should be part of that dialogue as well. So unfortunately, I didn't have the copy of either the Sentinel or the Herald that had that picture on the front page and showed people loading up the truck. But I thought that was awesome, and it just restores your faith in humanity. Maybe it's unfortunate that it takes disasters to restore that faith, but we'll take it when we can get it. And that is the end of my report. We will need a motion to go into executive session, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to go into executive session under J1, threatened or pending litigation, Hot Springs Land Development pursuant to 1015-187. J2, threatened or pending litigation pertaining to Ron Finn pursuant to 1015-1H7. And J3, limited personnel matter of the city manager pursuant to 1015-1H2.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Heschler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Madam Clerk, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Franco?
Yes.
Thank you. We will go into executive session in 3 minutes. We'll take a much-needed break.